and then learn how to make whole.
50s, and we would find, you know, and fascinating, and that is Harvard University Medical School, and I do a lot of the studies from their magazines that come out regularly, and they say we need a healthy eating plate. Okay, USDA, you did good because you made it simple, but let's have the vegetables and the fruits, but let's not just have grains, let's have whole grains. And let's not only have protein, but let's have healthy protein. And they are actually promoting even nuts and beans and all of the things that are the natural foods. And actually they are saying avoid. Can you imagine that? They're saying avoid the bacon. This is actually from the Harvard Medical School. And they are saying avoid the bacon, avoid the cold cuts, and all the processed meats. They're bad for us. And they're saying, don't even have them. Avoid means, don't use them. Avoid them. And so we're making progress. And they're saying drink some water too. And that's an important factor as well. And so let's talk about grains, because we're going to do some things with grains this afternoon. Grain has long been humanity's basic form of nourishment, right? We have grains all over the world, and we've traveled the world over and done these classes, and it's amazing. You'll find grains. I thought when I was in Poland, in fact, in the days of 1987 and 88 and all those times before even communism fell, where would I get the grains? But in the country, they had whole grains, and I made whole grain bread. It was amazing, but it's been a basic form of nourishment, and there are many, many benefits of whole grains. Let's take a look at them. Well, they're rich in complex carbohydrates. There are all kinds of fiber, different types of dietary fiber. There's even protein in our grains, and vitamins and minerals and a host of phytochemicals. And whole grains are economical. They're even a poor man's food, and they're nutritious, they're delicious, and they are high energy foods. And scientific evidence demonstrates that consuming whole grains can actually help prevent many of the 21st century diseases. So I want to eat some, don't you? I want to eat some of those good whole grains, because we know, and science has proved this, that we can reduce the risk of these diseases by using some of these whole grains. And whole grains can lower the risk of heart disease, and whole grains were found to reduce the risk of coronary heart disease in a study of 42,850 men ages 40 to 75 over a period of 14 years. Now that's a good study. You don't have just 5 people in a study, and you don't have it over a 3-month period, and you have a long period of time, and you have a good age group, because they're still pretty healthy at that age. At least I say, because I'm 77, and I know I'm healthy. I ran my first marathon, would you believe, at 70, and I came in 3rd in my age category. I ran the next one and came in 2nd in my age category. I ran another marathon and was just right behind the marathoner who won. And when I went to congratulate her, she said, "Oh, this is my 350th marathon." And so she was a professional marathoner, and I was right behind her and came in 2nd at 75. And didn't run last year because of COVID, but I'm going to do the half marathon this next year, because I got to build up again to it. But anyway, so I know that you can be healthy in your 70s, in your 80s, and even in your 90s. And I have a friend who's 104, and she drives her own car. She exercises every day. It's amazing. You can live to that healthy 100. And a 2004 issue of the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition reported that men It included 3 servings of whole grains, just 3 servings of whole grains in their daily diet had a lower risk of coronary heart disease. Now those whole grains don't only mean in whole grain bread. That means whole grain pasta, that means whole grain rice, because you see, when I was in China, and I congratulated them because they had low obesity. And in our country, in this country, we have 66.2% of this country are either overweight or obese. And so I said, in my country, people are obese, but you are lower. Why is that? They said, oh, Mrs. Finley, it's because we eat with chopsticks. I said, I know there's something more than chopsticks. But anyway, that was kind of cool. But I said, you don't get enough fiber. Oh, in my country, we don't either. We should have 30 grams a day, and in my country, we only get 15. Oh, we only get half the amount of fiber because we don't eat the whole grains. And I said, but my friends here in China, they only have about 12%. So maybe that brown rice to replace the white rice would be a good idea. How many think we could do that? And they were just excited to make some lifestyle changes. So we can too. But whole grains protect against even some types of cancer. And look at just the wheat nutrients. Whole wheat contains protein, fiber, vitamins, minerals, and the germ, and we have lots of germ that we're going to put. Besides the whole grains, we're going to add the wheat germ because that's where you have a lot of your nutrients. You have B1, B2, B6, niacin, B3, E, and also calcium, magnesium, iron, and zinc, all contained in that wheat. Isn't that exciting to use whole wheat because it's all right there? And bread is the staff of life. And so we're going to do some homemade bread making today. So we're going to have a healthy food demonstration of some whole grain, whole wheat bread. And even maybe a Danish roll like we have here. So here's the recipe. I'm going to leave it up there for you for a little bit because I'm going to come back here. And if some of you have my book, then you will have, if you have the book, you will have the recipe, but you will have it here. Now, let me tell you, let's look at the first rule of the kitchen. I'm sure you know what it is. What is it? It's to make sure you wash your hands. Now, I've washed mine several times, but I like to also wash them in front of you so that you know we start with good, clean hands, because cleanliness is actually very important. So now I have my water. I think it was on here. And let's see, it's all right. Okay, so what I'm going to do first, now we will transition here. We have these good camera people who are doing a stupendous job because they have to transition from there to now here. So the first thing I'm going to do is get my water not very hot. So if you want to see what really is the success of bread making, it starts with your yeast. Okay? It starts with your yeast. So I'm using Fleischmann's active dry yeast. And I am doing the water just very warm, like a baby's bottle temperature. And I'm putting my yeast in there. And then we're going to let that sit for just a moment. And then we're going to add 2.5 cups of water. So I have 1, and I have 2. And it looks like we're going to need a little bit more. And so I have 2.5 cups of water. And then in bread making, it's not complicated. You have certain basic ingredients. You have, and some things you can exchange. You can exchange, I know they have different types of bread, so you can exchange the grains and make different types of bread. But there are some few basic ingredients, and water is the very best liquid, okay? So water is the best liquid, and then I'm going to add some honey. You can either use honey or brown sugar, and we'll just add a little tiny bit more. That's good. Yep, perfect, yes. And I'm going to put the honey in here, and you can use either honey or brown sugar that you put into the bread. And then we're going to add a little bit of salt, and that's the place to use salt in your cookie. I don't even put the salt shaker on the table. I put it in my cookie. And then a little bit of oil, and I'm using the light olive oil. Olive oil is actually the very best oil. In fact, science is talking about the Mediterranean diet and people actually improving health by using olive oil. So I pretty strictly use the olive oil because I know it's one of the oil, as in the olive, is one of the very best oils. So I'm just going to mix this around so that I have the water and a little bit of the honey I'm using, and salt, and then oil. And then I'm using wheat germ. Now I know that there's the germ in the whole wheat flour, but I tell you, it gives you loads of nutrients, and it's a good way if you're using some of the bleached enriched flour, because you see in enriched flour, what you're getting is 5 nutrients back rather than having 22. So if I have this whole grain flour, I get 22 nutrients. If I use the enriched flour, I'm only getting 5 back. But when I add this back, I get them all back. But I still am doing 100% whole grain flour. This is the wheat germ here. Thank you, Raluca. I'm a good helper here. And then I'll be her helper because I'm going to have her demonstrate as well. But then I'm going to see this yeast here. It's going to bubble up. And then this is 100% whole grain flour. Now you can use either, I brought these, so just so you can see, you can get the King Arthur 100% whole wheat flour in any grocery store, or you can use the Bob's Red Mill 100% stone ground flour, which I'm going to use. And then I also, rather than using the unbleached enriched flour, I'm going to use the 100% stone ground pastry flour. It's a little lighter. However, it's 100% whole grain. And so you can exchange that in anything. The pancakes that you're going to have tonight also contains the whole wheat pastry flour. So now I'm going to mix in the flour. And, okay, and then we'll put the other, I always, if I do use any of the enriched flour, then I always add that last, because you might not use all of the flour, and you want to make sure that you have your 100%. But I'm using 100% here in everything, so it doesn't really matter. And so just mix that up, and what I do to make it really easy for people is I say you don't have to just work it and work it. Just take some of this flour, put it in here, and then I'm going to put some of this on my breadboard, and then I'm going to just put this out, and then, oh yeah, I got to put my yeast in. Thank you. It wouldn't go anywhere without the yeast. So that's right. We got to make sure everybody's great here. And so let's just do this, and we'll get all of that yeast out of there. And mix that all in. Make sure it's all mixed in good. I'm going to mix it in good anyway because I'm going to knead it all. But I don't have to mix it a long time. Now, if you think that you will be able to do this at home, I can assure you that you will. You know why? Because you won't have about 80 people watching you. And so you will have just a great time. And then I'm going to have them wash this bowl because I'm going to use that again. And put it in there because I'm going to let it sit. Actually, about an hour and a half, so we're going to have to really move along, aren't we? All right, so now I'm going to knead. Now when you knead your bread, so how many made homemade whole grain, not white, how many made whole grain, whole wheat bread? Just a few of you. Okay, let me ask the other way. How many of you have not ever made 100% whole grain, whole wheat? A number of you. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to share with you, just knead with the heel of your hand. Okay, so you're going to take the bread, pull it all together, and knead with the heel of your hand. And keep it together until you have it all mixed in. And you have a nice, smooth ball. That's what you want, is a nice, smooth ball. And you may or may not use all of the flour, but you have all of the whole. Well, as I mentioned, it doesn't really matter with this because I'm using all 100% whole grain, okay? And so we're going to mix this. You can see that it's beginning to come together. And we're going to wash that bowl and put a little bit of oil in the bottom. And then we're going to put it back in there and let it rise. And see what happens as we, and you can use the cake yeast, you can use the dry yeast. This is dry, but also the cake yeast is very good. I've used it many, many times. But yeast bread is not difficult to make. And I actually have a bread maker, but I don't use it. Because why? Because I get lots of exercise. I don't have to go to the gym for arm exercise. I get it right here eating my bread, you see? And so we're going to make a nice smooth ball out of this. And you will pretty much use almost the amount of flour that I've given you on the recipe, but I've added a little extra just in case we needed some here up front, and I wouldn't have to call for more. And then you can put in what you need. So you see it's beginning to come together in a nice smooth ball. And with the yeast, you don't want the water too hot or you don't want it too cold because it will kill it. Also salt, if you just add the salt to the yeast, it may kill it as well. So you have to make sure that your yeast is really good. If it's expired, I wouldn't use it because you don't want to waste all that flour on some expired yeast. So now you see what I have? I have a nice smooth ball. I'm going to put this in here. And I probably would put, just so it wouldn't harden, I would just put a little bit of that olive oil on the top to just, and then I put a towel over it, exactly. And then have a good helper who knows exactly what to do. And put this over, and so I'm going to let this rise, okay? And while it's rising, I'm going to have Mr. Finley, I'm going to have Mark go over some things in your book that will help you to see why we need all the fiber that we get from these whole grains. So I want you to take your books and he will tell you where to turn.
I thought I saw a couple of hands up about the making of the bread, so let's just pause for a moment and take a few quick questions. Yes?
Okay, do you just let it rise on the counter? You don't put it in a cooking?
I don't have a cooking oven, and I don't put it, I just put it out here, and it just goes up. And I've been in cold, air-conditioned places, and it goes up. It's better if your room is really cold. It's better to, put it on top of the fridge or someplace where it might be a little warmer, because it could get really cold. But it's going to rise.
I know, because we've been in Florida when I actually turn my oven light on, and I put it inside the oven because we know we get the air conditioner times in the summertime especially, so that helps.
Yeah.
Yes, I had a question here.
Yes, I use a bread machine on the dough cycle because I have arthritis, so does that work?
You can use, if you use good flours, you can use a bread machine and you can do it, yes. Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, I have 3 questions.
Sure, that's fine.
I never made bread before, so how do you know how many tablespoons are in the package?
You just, you can, well, 1 tablespoon is in the package, yes. If you get it by the packages, I just use 1 package, yes.
Okay, what's the difference between your light olive oil and regular olive oil?
Okay, yes, that's a very good question, and that often comes up. Light olive oil is actually better used in cooking, but your cold-pressed olive oil is very good, and it's nutritious, it's more nutritious, but it's better not to get that at a high temperature. And so I use the light olive oil in cooking, and if I'm doing salads or something, you can use the cold-pressed olive oil.
I just have, just pure olive oil, I don't know which is it.
If it says, it'll say on the bottle, like here, it says light, extra light taste, or it'll say cold pressed or something.
Never
So
saw it.
if it doesn't, then it's probably just your regular olive oil.
Okay, did you have another question?
How do you know how long to
Need it.
need it?
Just until you, just like I did, until you have a nice smooth ball. When all your flour comes together, because I didn't even finish it in the bowl because I had to do it quickly because I'm in a class. And so I just put it on the breadboard, knead it until it comes to a good smooth ball, and it doesn't stick to my hands, and then you know it's ready to go in the bowl.
We'll take one more question, and then we'll jump right back into our class. Yes?
Sorry, I noticed she's using metal bowls and metal utensils. Does it matter what kind of?
No, I use the stainless steel, it's a good thing, but you can use a glass bowl, you can use whatever, that doesn't really matter.
My wife and I lived in England for 5 years, and one of the countries that we enjoyed visiting, I particularly, was Portugal. And in Portugal, there's a beautiful monastery that overlooks the Mediterranean. The views from the top of that mountain and the monastery are absolutely spectacular. There's only one problem. There's only one way to get up to the monastery. The monk on the top lowers down a basket in a rope. And the old monk cranks you up as you get into the basket. Some time ago, one traveler had gotten into the basket with another monk, and the old monk on the top was cranking it up. And you know, the wind is blowing a little bit, you look out to the Mediterranean, but your heart's beating a little faster as you go up that cliff. And so the traveler, the visitor, said to the monk, "How often do they change the rope?" And the monk's response was, "Don't worry, every time one breaks, we change it." And, you know, it's that way with so many people's health, isn't it? They wait until something breaks down. They wait until their health breaks, and they say, you know, I've got to get with it and get on a better diet. I've had 2 heart attacks, so I've got to get on a better diet. You know, I just have been diagnosed with diabetes 2, so I better do something to correct my diet. So I really commend you for coming to class, because here in class, you want to enter into a journey of good health. Many of you have already been on that journey, and this class will just enhance that. If you have your workbook, if you'll take it and turn to page 11, Homemade Bread Making Made Easy. It's fascinating to notice, and we have this in the first paragraph of the book, it's fascinating to notice that since 2010, there's been a health revolution in the United States, particularly 55% of all consumers and all Americans have shifted from white bread to whole grain bread. 55%. So there's that shift taking place. You can go into most restaurants today and look on the menu and find something that's a plant-based diet. 20 years ago that wasn't possible. But the scientific evidence is coming across pretty clearly. If you look at the top 30 countries in the world, the United States, for longevity, is running about 17. That means there's 16 countries that are living longer than America, but yet we spend more money on health care than any country in the world. So you have to wonder why. Why is it that America is so far down the list? Why is Denmark and Finland and Norway, the Nordic countries, so far ahead of us? Why are the Japanese so far ahead of us? When you begin to look at some of these issues, you begin to discover that there is a significant lifestyle difference in diet, in exercise, in lifestyle, in attitudes. And so that's why you're seeing this shift in America today. One of the things we're going to be emphasizing throughout class is the importance of fiber in the diet. You get fiber in a lot of different ways. You certainly can get it in whole grains, but you get fiber as well in various types of fruits and vegetables. You get fiber in peas and lentils and beans. But if you look on page 11, we raise the question, what is fiber? When we talk about fiber in the diet, what is fiber? Fiber, you may want to write that down. Fiber is the indigestible cellular material from food. So fiber is typically not digested. One of the early studies on fiber was done by an English physician by the name of Dennis Roll. And he began to notice that tribes in Africa, like the Bantu tribe, had no bowel cancer at all. And he began to look at their diet. He said, why is it that these Bantus don't have any bowel cancer? And one thing he noticed is they eat a lot of fiber in their diet. They have a lot of maize in their diet, which is corn, beans, and lentils. Then he looked at the British, and he found that the British had very high incidence of bowel cancer. And he said, why? And he compared the fiber in the Bantu diet with the fiber in the British diet, and the fiber in the British diet was very, very, very low. Much higher rates, and he tried to figure out why is that true. He began to look at the digestive systems and the bowel movements of the Bantus. And the digestive system of the Bantus reproduced. They got rid of their waste products very, very quickly. Where the longer your waste products remain in the bowel, the more likelihood you are to have bowel cancer. And Burkitt discovered that. So there was this real revolution then in whole grain breads and whole grain cereals, just from the bowel cancer. Another thing that they began to look at was how fiber and cholesterol interact. And they began to discover that the higher the fiber diet you have, the more, if you have cholesterol in your diet, the more the fiber and the cholesterol interact, and the more your body is able to reduce the cholesterol levels. Now, how much fiber do we need each day? Someplace between, and this is the bottom of page 11, someplace between 25 and 30 grams of fiber every day. Now, does that mean you're counting your grams? So, if you had to count every vitamin that you need, I need this amount of vitamin B2, B12, I need this amount of fiber, you're going to go crazy if you try to count it. If you eat a wide variety of fruits, nuts, grains, vegetables, beans, whole grains, you'll get adequate fiber in your diet. And it's about 25 to 30 grams. Now, over on page, you're going to be wanting to look at the next page, page 12, and what are some sources of fiber? What can you do to take a look at sources of fiber? I've given you three significant areas or categories of fiber: fruits and vegetables. Fruits and vegetables have no cholesterol in them. The only cholesterol comes from animal products. Dairy products like cheese and milk and eggs and so forth. But fruits and vegetables may have some fat. Some vegetables do, but they don't have any cholesterol. Fruits and vegetables are typically fairly high in fiber. The highest in fiber are your legumes, like your peas, beans, and lentils. Peas, beans, and lentils are very high fibrous foods. And also C is whole grains. So if you're looking at the three top fibrous foods, if you concentrate on getting fruits and vegetables, peas, beans, lentils, legumes, and whole grains, you'll have adequate amounts of fiber. How's our bread coming along?
Oh, wow.
You must have talked a long time, because an hour and a half went by, and this is what your bread looks like. Wow. Amazing, isn't it? Now, I have to admit that I cheated just a little because I doubled the recipe, but still it came up a lot. And so I put this on an hour and a half before. So you see, when you're home, you mix up your bread. It doesn't take you very long. What did it take me? 10 minutes or less? It doesn't take very long. You get all your ingredients out, and then you mix up your bread, put it aside, and go and do your washing and do your studying, do what, walk. While after I mixed up the dough for the bread for your samples today that we did on Friday, then Luke and I went shopping. And so we were over at Hobby Lobby getting some of these beautiful signs that you see up here. And so you can get a lot done. So now I'm going to take this dough and we're going to do some things with it, all right? We're going to start by just putting a little bit of, I didn't even need to put that much on there, but put our dough on here. And then I'm going to dump that out, and you can see it's pretty light, and that's what you want, is something light. I'm going to push some of this aside because I don't need all of that. And then you're going to take, now I use these little pans. These little pans are so good. You see, I just put it in here like this, and it comes out. I like it because it goes through. This is all homemade bread. Or you can use a bigger pan, bake it a little longer or whatever. And we're going to make some loaves. We're going to make a Danish roll. You can make some regular rolls, some bow knots, some clover leaves. You can do all sorts of things. So I can get out of this, for this size, I can get 6. If you're doing the regular recipe that's in the book or here, then you would get 3, okay? So you get 3. And at home, if you want to make it perfectly the same, I didn't have a scale here, got them pretty much the same, but I have a scale, and you can actually weigh the amount of dough. So I'm going to cut it into 6 pieces of dough. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And sometimes I don't get it always perfect, but it doesn't matter. Everything in life doesn't have to be perfect. And so you just make it fun. And that's the other thing that we like about our cooking schools, all of these things, is that I tell the people that are helping, I'm going to grab a little bit from this one, and I tell them the point is that people are more important than things. And so you want to have a good time. You don't want to get upset with people because they don't do it just right or whatever. You want to make sure that you are, having good relationships. That's important. And it used to be that they made bread in the olden days. There were a lot. And even the children learned how to make bread. So now I'm going to take this dough, and I'm not going to work it a lot. You don't have to work it a lot. What you're going to do is, make a little loaf. So I'm just going to put this, knead it, not very much, just enough. Tuck it all underneath like this, and fit it for the size of the pan that I have. And you put it in there, and you set it aside for about 45 minutes, depending on the temperature of the room or where the bread goes. Sometimes it's an hour, but no more. You don't want it to be over raised. And so we're going to set that aside, and we're going to do another one. And you can make a lot of loaves in just a short period of time, and your family is going to get those good nutrients that Mark talked about. I'm so glad that we have my husband here today, because sometimes when I do these, I have to go between the book and the demonstrating and all of the things, and so it makes it a lot easier if he can help me, and so I'm so thankful for that. But see, you just put them in your little pans. Oh, we've made 2. So let's make another one for Luca. And so,
And I remember Pastor Phil, you saying how wonderful it is to get home and smell
oh yes,
fresh baked bread, right?
nothing like,
Something about that smell, and it makes it very homey, right?
yes. Homemade bread is so good. Some of these are a little bigger than some of the others, so we won't worry if some comes out warm than the others. I didn't take the time to make them all exactly the same, but we're doing good with it. Make sure that you get it all tucked in though, because you might have bubbles. Have you ever had bubbles in your bread when you make it? And that's because it's, maybe not quite done. There we go with another one. And one more, because the last one we're going to roll out. I'm going to save this one too, because I want to show you some other things. All right, now we can have a rolling pin. And I have to tell you, when I made the other bread, that Danish roll, I did not have a rolling pin here. We had to get one at Luca's house for today. And I just used a jar.
This one right here.
Oh yeah, I just used that. And I rolled it out. And
We just remodeled our kitchen, and my friend Becky and I still need to go shopping spree for just getting a few more items, and the rolling one is not on our list, I guess, so.
so if you have a rolling pin, it just rolls it out nice. But if you don't, just use what you have. I said, what do you have here? I just need a jar or something, and I just used that. And so you can do all sorts of things. Now I'm going to make that Danish roll that I have over there, or if some of you have my cookbook, you'll see a picture of it in there. And so I'm going to use this kind of a pan, and I'm going to just stretch it out to be just kind of oblong. And I'm going to add a little bit of Earth Balance. It's one of the best one that's out on the market today for some kind of replacement for butter and margarine, since we're not using butter because we want it all plant-based. I'm using the Earth Balance here. So you just want to spread a little bit on the dough. And then, because it is a Danish sweet roll, if you want it, you don't have to add even the brown sugar. If you just like it without it, that's fine. But if you want a little brown sugar in it, you can add that. Now, I recognize that brown sugar is just about the same as not quite the same, because you have molasses added, which where you have some minerals. And so, but sugar is sugar, and we want to be careful how much sugar we get in our diet, because it's really very important. But there are special occasions, that holidays exactly, that you want to do that. And then I use the coriander. You can use, some people use the cinnamon. Cinnamon is a lightly irritating spice. The spices, the heavy spices, if it's hot, when it goes in the mouth and down in the stomach, it burns the lining of the stomach and eventually destroys it. So that's why hot food is not the best for us. But cinnamon is only a lightly irritating, so you can use it occasionally, but if you want a good replacement for even that, then you have the coriander seed, and I'm going to put a little bit of that coriander in here. And then I'm going to add some good nutrients with my raisins, and you're going to get the dried fruit has lots of iron, and if someone, if you're even feeling a little tired, maybe you need some extra iron, and so you can add some raisins. Dried fruit is very, very good. Fresh fruit is, of course, the best. Everything that we try to eat is whole plant foods, not just vegan foods, but whole plant foods. That's the very best. And so, but homemade things are always better because you don't get all the additives. I have no additives, no preservatives in the food that we're making here. Then I'm going to add some protein out of some good walnuts. And did you know, and the first study was on men, they said if men eat walnuts, just a handful of nuts, 3 to 5 times a week, they could reduce their heart disease by 50%. Now, most recently, that was a Loma Linda University medical study. Now they have Harvard University Medical School and other medical schools that have done studies, and they've done it on women now and found the same thing, that they could eat a handful of nuts and reduce their heart disease. So I'm going to add some of these good walnuts. I feed my husband walnuts or some kind of nuts every single day. I say, did you get your nuts? I got to put them on your plate because I don't want you to be dying of a heart attack. And so I'm going to just load this with all these good nuts. So you see, and now I'm going to roll this up, just like if someone were making a jelly roll or something. So I'm going to roll this up like this and just tuck it all in because you want all that goodie. And this is all whole grain bread that we made this from. So this is all 100. Now, I have another alternative in the book as well that you can do. But I just, due to time, I will oftentimes just make this. Now I'm going to take my pan here. Am I in the right place, Josiah? Hopefully. And these good AV people. And then I'm going to take this and put it in the pan and turn it like this. And then I'm going to cut it, but don't cut it through. When I did this when my children were little, I would tell them, you just cut that enough to see those raisins and those nuts kind of peeking through, right? And so you just cut that along, and then it looks really nice when you finish. And then you let this rise as well for about 45 minutes to an hour. And we're going to set that aside, and you're going to smell the aroma of this bread when we get all done. And I'm going to take some of this, and you can make, I have some extra pans. I don't remember what we did with them, but I'll just show you what you can do. You can make, like if you see those bow knots that you see in restaurants sometimes, you just take your dough and roll it till you have a long piece of dough. And then you can just flip it like this and make a bow knot. And you have a nice little bow knot. So you can do a lot of different things. But I'm going to put this in the pan because then we have another whole loaf of bread. Yeah, I put them somewhere, but it's okay because I'm just going to put it in here. And so we'll make a little loaf, and this one will come out little because it's not quite as much dough. Now, yeah, we'll just put it on there for now. And or a smaller one if we have one here. So see what we've done here? We have all this bread made, and we're going to get to taste it. So while we set up for a quick bread, cornbread, that Melissa is going to demonstrate for you, Pastor Finley will go through more information in your books that will keep you living healthy, happy, and living longer.
So, you're looking forward to smelling some of that bread? I've told my wife that when I come home, when the house is filled with the aroma of good bread, even if we couldn't eat it, it would be worth her making it. It's so relaxing to smell that good aroma when you come home. What are some of the diseases that a diet high in fiber helps us to prevent? If you take your booklet, please, and turn to page 12, there are 3 major diseases that are helpful. One is heart disease. We've talked about that a little bit. You're looking at page 12, question number 4 on the bottom of the page. So one of the major diseases, what is heart disease? Let me tell you a little bit about heart disease. Heart disease is the #1 killer in America today, over 500,000. It was up to 700,000, but because of new health practices, and because people are getting more interested in their lifestyle, more exercise, better diets, we're reducing heart disease in this country a great deal. But about 500 to 600,000 people a year die in America because of heart disease, and it could be really largely eliminated according to multiple medical sources. One of the reasons for heart disease, of course, is obesity. a diet that's high in animal products, animal fats, cholesterol. So if you want to reduce your risk of heart disease, it's important to reduce the amount of animal products in your diet. A plant-based diet is going to really help to reduce that risk. Now, certainly there are some genetic factors, but the more you have genetic factors, the more important it is to try to reduce the risk through dietary and exercise. Heart disease, if you look on page 12, I've noted a couple studies here. One study is from Nutrition Source, and it's an article called Fiber Start Roughing It. I like the title, Fiber Start Roughing It. They studied 40,000 male health professionals, and they found that there was a 40% lower risk for heart disease in those that have had a diet that was high in fiber. And what are the sources of fiber again? Help me now. What are some of the sources of fiber we talked about?
Fruits and vegetables.
Fruits and vegetables. Yeah, legumes. And whole grains, sure. And when we talk about legumes, what are we talking about?
Beans,
lentils.
Beans, what else?
Lentils.
Lentils, sure. What else? Peas, right. So it's a good class. You're getting it. So, yeah, 40% lower risk of coronary heart disease in that group. They looked at another group, and they looked at what was called a meta-analysis. Now, a meta-analysis means that you take all the studies you can find that are available on a given topic, and you put them together and say, what did they look like? So in this meta-analysis, they took about 6 or 7 studies on heart disease that were done over an extensive period of time with tens of thousands of people. And they found that if you eat 2.5 servings of whole grains a day, that you had a 21% less likely to have a heart attack. Then they took a meta-analysis of women, 700,000 men and women. And they found in that group that you reduce your risk of type 2 diabetes by 21% on a whole grain diet. Harvard University looked at nurses, and they found that nurses who ate 2 to 3 servings of whole grains a day had 30% likely to have a heart attack. Now, every time we begin to talk about wheat and whole grains, there are those people that ask about celiac disease. They ask about a gluten-free diet. They ask about wheat allergies. Let me address all 3 of those quite quickly. What is celiac disease? Celiac disease is a disease that the protein portion of the wheat causes the immune system to attack the small intestine. And that can lead to a variety of problems. It leads to irritable bowel syndrome and many others. But here's the interesting thing. Only 1% of America has celiac disease. 99% don't. Only 1%. So if your doctor has diagnosed you as having celiac disease, you want to substitute other grains or other fibrous foods. Beans, peas, barley, fruits, vegetables, lentils, so you can substitute other things. What about wheat allergy? About 1% of America has wheat allergy. How does wheat allergy manifest itself? It's different than gluten intolerance. Wheat allergy manifests itself with hives, with swelling, with breaking out. A person who has wheat allergy should avoid wheat totally. If you've had wheat allergy, what about gluten intolerance? About 7% of America has gluten intolerance. The idea of being gluten-free, 30% of Americans feel that if we are gluten-free, we're going to be more healthy. Just not true. If you have gluten intolerance, there are some things you can do. First, you want to stay away from those foods that have high gluten content. But there are many grains that you can do. Quinoa is a wonderful grain. You can try rye. One of the things that one of my physician friends that I was talking to last night about gluten intolerance, he said if people go on a plant-based diet, often they try to add back certain gluten foods, and they find that they're able to do that within a period of a year on a plant-based diet. There's something else that's quite interesting if you have been told that you're gluten-free. There are certain grains in Europe that don't have the sprays that we have in the United States because Europe is much stricter in the production of grains. And so there are certain grains that you can try in buying European wheat that's available. The other thing that we found is that if you grind your own wheat, sometimes that gluten intolerance is not as present. But just keep this in mind. The whole gluten-free thing are there some people that are really intolerant to wheat? There are. And so they do substitute other grains. About 6%, 7%. But only 1% have a wheat allergy, and only 1% have celiac disease. So if you add those percentages up, it's less than 10%. So 90% of us are okay. The ones that have those other challenges, just be sensitive, be careful. And we have an entire list of various grains that you can use, you can eat. We have another demonstration, don't we?
Yes, thank you so much, Pastor Keely. How many of you like making cornbread? Okay, that's awesome. Now, what is cornbread? Did you know where the origin came from? It's from the Native Americans, and then it became like a southern thing, right? Cornbread is just like a staple, right, around our homes. And so this afternoon, we're going to teach you how to make one that is plant-based. So first of all, you are going to mix all your dry ingredients. You're going to have cornmeal right here.
I'll show you the recipe after.
Oh yes, would you like to go ahead and pull it up? That's fine.
That's right.
All right. No problem. So there's the cornmeal, and now I'm going to put the flour. Can't make cornmeal without cornbread without flour, right? There's the flour and the wheat germ that Mrs. Keely was talking about. She actually puts a wheat germ in a lot of her recipes. So here goes the wheat germ because we're using some of the white flour. And then I use this Romford baking powder. It's aluminum free, and that's what you want to use in your baking. Doesn't have the aluminum. So we'll do that. And then we will put a little bit of salt. Just a little bit, just to give that mixture. And I'm going to mix those really, really well. And then we want to mix the wet ingredients. And in here, I have already mixed the egg replacer with the water. And it's kind of almost like an egg. This is an egg replacer, and I just let it sit for a few minutes. You can find egg replacer like at baby's health food. Sometimes maybe Publix carries it, I don't know, but here's the egg replacer. What's that? Okay, here's the wet egg replacer and the honey and the soy milk. Wouldn't that be great if everything was pre-measured at home too? How much faster our cooking would go, right? Or all the veggies chopped, right, Josiah? Or the dishes done. He's my dishwasher. And I tell him, Josiah, get ready. Today I'm cooking a lot of food. When you come every hour in the kitchen and do dishes for me, so I'm very blessed to have such a helpful young man in my family. So he does a lot of dishes for me. And the soy milk. And we like to use the silk. We find that the soy milk is a little more creamier than some like the almond milk or oat milk. Some of the oat milk is creamy too. But we like the soy. So we mix them very well. And then we're going to add them to the dry ingredients.
Let me just say also that the Rumford, they've actually done scientific studies on. So when you go in the grocery store, look at the Rumford. Because it's not just the aluminum. It's the fact that they have scientifically shown that there are not the residues that you have when you use baking powder or when you use baking soda. Those leave residues. And so the Rumford, if some of you are familiar with, there's a cookbook put out by Dr. Richard Hansen, and in his cookbook, his wife's cookbook, and his doing a lot of scientific studies, he shows how it's not only aluminum, but also no residues in the Rumford. So if you're using the baking powder, look for that. And it's quite prevalent today.
And also there's another one that I like, and I think it's featherweight. They're a little harder to find, but that's an excellent one if you're baking cakes and brownies and all that. So I mix liquids here, and we're going to put it here with the dry ingredients, and then we're going to spray a little bit of olive oil spray on the pan here. And then we'll bake this for you. So you're going to get bread smell and cornbread smell, and it's going to make you so hungry by 5:30. You'll be ready to eat all the samples that we made. So,
And what kind of cornmeal are you using?
I'm using non-GMO. If you're using cornmeal, I strongly encourage you to use the non-GMO cornmeal. And this is Bob Meals. I love the Bob Meals brand. This is medium grind, but you can find. I grew up in Romania, so we have different kinds of cornmeal, but this is just a medium grind, and
The medium is one of the better ones because if you just get the real fine, it's not as crunchy and really nice. And so look for the medium brown. Yes, we have a couple of questions.
Yes.
for Luca.
Yes, I've seen that with some bread or even like some muffins that we have baking soda and baking powder that they incorporate into the ingredient for the bread. Is that also the same? They put like part.
If you have the baking soda, I would tell you that probably the best use of the baking soda is to clean your refrigerator. Keep your refrigerator clean because there are also residues that you get from the baking soda. Soda is not the best for our system. And that's why if you're using the baking powder, or as Raluca said, there are some others like the featherweight, but there's the Rumford that is good. It's better not to use your baking sodas.
All right.
all right. So I'm going to spray the pan just lightly, and then I'll be adding the cornbread mixture here, and then we'll bake it for 20 to 25 minutes, like at 400 Fahrenheit, because it needs like higher temperature to get that baking powder. And so when you're done, my wonderful friend Ayla made the sample for you today. And so
But we'll turn the oven on and bake it as well. We've got some other things warming there, but trying to keep warm.
And so this is your final product. Thank you so much, Ayla, for making that. And I put it here with an African stew. It's one of my favorite stews. It has sweet potatoes and garbanzo beans. So that's a way to serve it with other soups, with chili. This is cornbread.
Okay, so we'll go back to our, we'll go back to our screen here, and we'll share some more principles on nutrition. And so thank you, Josiah. I know that you're doing a big job transferring all of these, but we'll transition because, and we'll give you, some of you have my cookbook, and so the recipes are in there. It's hard to, I can't print them out. The book is copyrighted. Pacific Press doesn't allow, or any publisher allow, to just copy them and print them out. You can get them in the book, or if you want to just see it here, you can see that's the whole wheat bread, and then it has to fit into that. But let's look at some advantages of the homemade bread. Well, we learned that it was high in what? High in fiber, and there are other high fiber foods. But homemade whole grain breads are free from also other things, artificial preservatives. Look at the breads, and you'll see sometimes more ingredients than you even can read. I mean, it's amazing. And then the dairy products that are in a lot of the breads today. And so they're often present in commercially prepared breads. And then the homemade whole grain bread has a wonderful flavor and great texture. And also it provides warm memories. So there's a lot of factors with your homemade whole grain bread. And freshly baked homemade whole grain bread not only has an aroma that is delightful, but it's also nutritious and it's satisfying. Do you know that one of the reasons that people eat a lot of junk foods today is because they're not satisfied nutritionally? They're eating a lot of junk foods, a lot of prepared, a lot of processed foods. So they're not nutrition. We are not calorie deficient in this country. Now, I've seen what it's like in calorie deficient places. I've been to places in Africa where they were calorie deficient, and your heart just goes out to those little children with those extended bellies because they don't have enough calories. We're not calorie deficient, but we are nutritionally deficient in this country because we're not getting, because of all the junk foods, prepared foods, processed foods that we eat, and that's why they're not satisfying. So then we have the next demonstration. We're trying to coordinate all this between Mark and Maluka and myself here. So you saw the cornbread there, and this is the cornbread recipe. If you want to just quickly write it down or take a picture or something, but we just put in the cornmeal, the unbleached and rich flour, and I use even some of the pastry flour, and I've even added almond flour. So you get some almond flour in there too. And then wheat germ, and then your Rumford baking powder, and I put Rumford there because I know it doesn't have the aluminum or the residues. And then a little bit of salt, and then the egg replacer, the soy milk, a little bit of earth balance, and a little bit of honey. And so that's your cornbread. And then, of course, we will have Pastor Finley go over some more on your books at this point. And then we're going to go into making breakfast a better meal. And so while we get set up for that, yes, we can take a couple questions. Yes.
Can a corn in with the cornbread?
Can we what?
Throw a can of corn in the cornbread?
You can. I like it better without, but if you like it with, go ahead. When you use the medium brown cornmeal, or even the even heavier browns, it's so crunchy and nice that I like it. I personally like it better without the corn, but there's no problem. You could add it, yes, if you like it that way. But corn is actually a wonderful grain. Do you know that we were in a place, my husband and I were in a place in Africa, and the only thing this family got, the only thing was corn 3 times a day. Corn 3 times a day. They ground it, some of them making different things with the cornmeal. They got corn, fresh corn. So corn is actually, it's not a vegetable, it's a grain. And corn, people use it as a vegetable, but it's a grain, and it's a wonderful grain. It has nutrients in there. And so to just get that good crunchy cornbread is wonderful. Okay, we're going to get set up.
Right here.
Yes,
Couple more questions,
yes.
sure.
Yes.
Can we substitute millet for corn?
Millet is a wonderful grain. It is a fantastic grain. I make millet patties. I have some of them in the workbook. You can find in my workbook here, millet patties. I haven't substituted it personally for the cornbread, but you might want to give it a try.
Millet is the highest.
Where can you get millet?
Oh, you can get it at
It is healthy.
stores, many places.
Whole Foods should have millet if you have a Whole Foods.
Hey, you know what? It's amazing because I even buy my millet on Amazon. I do too. You can get almost anything on Amazon. And I want millet, and I want it quick, and if I don't have time, I just order it and you can get it. Millet is a wonderful grain. It is fabulous. And I have things, patties and other things.
Millet is the highest grain in protein of all grains. So millet is really it's outstanding. Yes, just a few questions quickly, yes.
You use the baking powder. You can substitute the baking powder for the baking soda. If I find any recipe that I like a lot, and I want to make it both plant-based and healthy, I just substitute even the baking powder for the baking.
And this is
baking
easy
soda.
for those that live locally. You can find millet at Debbie's Health Food and DeLand Bakery up in DeLand. or for sprouting with the park and all foods in all the month.
We want to answer all your questions, but we have so many demonstrations and so many things that, is there some that really need it right now while we're on this? Did you have one?
Autism, I knew that we can reverse like diabetes. Is there anything that
I don't know about autism. That's a very difficult one.
Yeah, we don't know of any dietary studies that contribute to reduction, to autistic reversing it. We do know that a plant-based diet will help any human being to build their immune system, but autism is a very difficult one to deal with, and we don't know, there's no studies that I've read that deal with dietary and autism. Any other questions? Yes?
I'd like to know your thoughts on comparison of the non-dairy spreads, like Smart Balance, Fruit Balance. What makes one better than the other?
Sure. Tina, do you want to answer that, or do you want me to answer it?
What is it?
The question is non-dairy spreads. Why would you use Smart Balance rather than another one?
Well, we do it in place of butter because the animal products actually are not the best for us. There are so many scientific studies. In fact,
But I think the question was,
I know.
comparing those non.
okay, you can answer that, and I will just say.
Okay, you take that one.
I'll take this. If some of you haven't seen this book, The Future of Nutrition, by Colin Campbell, he's the one that wrote the China study. And I tell you, it is very fascinating because now they are definitely attributing the animal products, not just the meat, but also the milk and the dairy and all the rest, to cancer. And there are studies, why are people in this country and around the world getting so much cancer? It's because of all the animal products. And he proves that and shows it in another class, not this class, but I just taught in another class on this kind of subject, and it was absolutely unbelievably fascinating because science is showing that there's a direct link between the animal products and the animals themselves and cancer. And now they're doing so many studies. It's absolutely fascinating. If I had time, we could go into that. So that's the reason we substitute the butter for some of these other, just to further that.
When you look at all of the various plant-based spreads, and I think that was your question really, how do you compare plant-based spreads? The simple way, there's a very simple way to do that. And what you do, rather than my going over each one because there are so many, what you want to do is look at the ingredients in them. The more ingredients, the more harmful it's going to be to you. So there are some plant-based spreads that I would suggest to you are not really healthy. French fries are plant-based.
All right.
Coca-Cola is plant-based, right? Coca-Cola. When you begin to look at some of the varying, so not everything that is plant-based is healthy. There's amanita and scarial mushrooms that'll kill you, but they're plant-based. So not everything plant-based is healthy. So look, what you want to do is the least ingredients, and I would stay away from certain oils. Olive oil base, corn oil base, you're going to be a lot better than some of the other bases of when you look at the base of the spread. All right, we're going to jump over quickly to page 14. Ready to go?
Yes.
Mayo Clinic gave a fiber chart, and we have used it here. I think it's really interesting. Page 14. The highest fruit in fiber. If you would have asked me that, if I was taking a college nutrition class, and you said, what's the highest fruit in fiber? What would you just guess? You'd probably guess blueberries, you'd probably guess apples, maybe I'd probably guess apple. But look, here are your fruits, Mayo Clinic. Raspberries, 1 cup, 8 total fiber grams. 8 grams of fiber, 1 cup. Wow. Apples with skin, 4.4. So your raspberries are a higher source of fiber. Somebody says raspberries are really expensive. It's more expensive if you have a heart attack. You're sure going to look at $100,000 easy for a heart attack. It's more expensive than the doctor's bill, so don't worry about paying a couple bucks for a pack of raspberries. Think about what you're going to be paying if your doctor's bills are a little more than a couple dollars, typically. Look at your grains. Here you've got whole wheat cooked spaghetti. If somebody likes spaghetti, I love it. It's 6.3 total grams. But now I want you to go down to split peas. My wife makes a great split pea soup. 1 cup, 16.3 grams. You look at lentils cooked, 15.6 grams. Black beans. So things like peas, beans, and lentils are really, really helpful. Now for you artichoke fans, now honestly I'm not an artichoke fan. That's not really great above the line. But artichokes are high, 10.3 grams. And then you can look down. So take a look at this chart. Now, one of the other values, we looked at fiber, but one of the other values of whole grains, which are B-complex vitamins, thiamine, riboflavin, niacin. And I'll tell you how the early studies came on this one. There's a physician at Mayo Clinic by the name of Dr. Ray Williams. He was doing studies in the 1940s. And he sensed that something was wrong with the refined white flour diet of America. So Williams said, I'm going to try an experiment. What I'm going to do is get a group of ladies, and they would have to sign a waiver to be in this experiment. And I am going to deplete their diet consciously of B vitamins. Now he took a team of women who worked together in ancillary things at their clinic. These women would make beds, they would wash floors, they would clean bathrooms, they were household maids, we might call them, but they worked in the hospital as a team. They were a very efficient team. They were known for their positive attitudes, their quick work habits, and their ability to get along. He took riboflavin, niacin, thiamine, the B-complex out of their diet. Within a period of 3 months, they began to argue, they began to fight. Within 6 months, they couldn't do their regular tasks. He then reinforced their diet with thiamine, riboflavin, etc., the vitamin B complex. Notice their calmness, their lack of anxiety. One thing we know is that the B complex vitamins and whole grains not only help us in the area of reducing heart disease, reducing bowel cancer, etc., but they help us with nervousness, anxiety, tension. Notice on page 15, a deficiency, and I'm looking under number 5, a deficiency in B-complex vitamins has been shown to produce heightened anxiety, increased tension, greater vulnerability. Now, if you look at the American diet, particularly among children, if you take whole grain cereals out and you give kids cereals that are 55% sugar, which are a lot of the cereals in America today are 55% sugar, you look at the ingredients in some of those cereals and you'll see sugar is the first, second, or third ingredient. If you deplete the diet from sugar, from vitamin B, the complex vitamins, the whole grains, and you increase the diet in sugar, the kid is going to be much more anxious, much more tense. Have you ever noticed when you have a birthday party, you give them 2 pieces of cake and 3 scoops of ice cream, and you say, it's birthday, why not do that? And you invite 7 or 8 kids over, and those kids are bouncing off the wall, and you're about ready to go crazy. Have you ever noticed that? What's the reason for that? The reason is heavy sugar, low whole grains. We find that extensively. I'm going to go over, when we talk about breakfast, the Iowa breakfast studies, and what a lack of breakfast and a high sugar content does to the attitudes of children in school. But I think we have another demonstration.
Before that, we're going to go back to our screen. We're going to go back to the screen and we're going to talk about breakfast. So we're trying to balance several classes here. One on bread. We have a whole class just on homemade bread making, made easy, and then we have a whole class on making breakfast a better meal. And then we're trying to coordinate not only the book, but PowerPoint, because some of the information that I'm giving you on the PowerPoint is new evidence that has come in even recently, and it's just fascinating to see. And so we're going to go back to the screen, and we're going to talk about making breakfast a better meal. So let's eat the best foods at the best times. Oh, what's that? So the second, what's the first principle, class? Eat the right, yes, eat the right food, the best food. And what's the second principle? Eat at the right times. What are the right times? What are the right times? Well, let's look at Harvard Health Publishing from Harvard Medical School. It was in an article, Breaking the Fast, and it says this: if we miss the day's first meal, what's the first meal called? Breakfast. Notes Dr. David S. Ludwig, a nutrition expert at Harvard-affiliated Children's Hospital in Boston, we may start tapping our energy reserves. Why do people not have enough energy? Because they're not eating enough breakfast, including what's stored in our muscle. And in addition to making us feel tired, missing breakfast is likely to increase the temptation to reach for an unhealthy pick-me-up snack later and then to overeat in general. Why are even children and childhood obesity going up? Because people are eating, the children are eating snacks. Sometimes they're eating serving snacks at churches, at schools, at all these different events that they have. And they don't realize that it's not best for them because it doesn't give the stomach even a chance to rest. And it should take a rest. Well, a health educator at the same time as Dr. John Harvey Kellogg, who actually invented Kellogg's cereal, and the first granola, the first one was actually granula, and she was a health educator par excellence in her day, and even in 1905 she writes, at breakfast time, the stomach is in a better condition to take care of more food than at the second or the third meal of the day. The habit of eating a sparing breakfast and a large dinner is wrong. It's not good. It's not right. Make your breakfast correspond more nearly to the heartiest meal of the day. And why? Because look at the word breakfast itself. Yes, it breaks the fast of the night. And you've been fasting for approximately even 10, 12 hours. But new studies are showing we may do better even if we had a 16-hour fast. And I'm going to show you that. So there are advantages related to digestion in eating a healthy, nutritious breakfast. All the previous meals are well digested and the stomach is ready for food. If you're eating lighter in the evening and eating a good breakfast, that is the time to eat a good meal. And digestive juices secreted by the stomach when we awake prepare our bodies to thoroughly digest our food. And that's why breakfast is the most important meal. Now there's a law out on intermittent fasting today, okay? And we could go into a lot of this, but just to make it simple, I've just done a couple things here. From Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis. And Dr. Luigi Fontana has done a lot of those studies. And he says, we know that there are benefits from calorie restriction. There is, okay? That's proven. But what's the problem? Most people don't want to do it. And it's too tough, says Washington University nutrition researcher and aging expert Luigi Fontana, MD and a PhD, the study's principal investigator. The good news is that data from animals even shows that intermittent fasting may be as effective in extending lifespan and improving health. You can actually, by intermittent fasting, how do you do that? And how do you even have a 16-hour fast and enough hours in between? Again, health educator said this in 1896, 5 hours at least should elapse between each meal, and always bear in mind that if you would give it a trial, you'd find that 2 meals even are better than 3. Now that doesn't mean everybody needs to be on the 2-meal-a-day plan. 3 meals may be good for other people. So 3 meals, but nothing in between. So 3 meals is the very, very best. And this is what Luigi Fontana says, and he's the founder, and he's the co-director of the Longevity Research Program at Washington University in St. Louis. Done a lot of studies on this. And he says fasting for as little as 16 hours could improve some health measures and counteract disease processes. So if you want to get rid of these killer diseases, how do you do that 16-hour fast? Well, if you eat a good breakfast, you eat in the middle of the day, and you either skip supper or have some fruit that digests in about an hour, some even less than that, then you can have that 16-hour fast. And that is really proving to be one of the greatest health measures for people who want to lose weight. And you know that the weight around the belly area is the most, dangerous. And if women are more than 35 inches around the waist from, the middle of the belly right here, and men more than 40, then that is dangerous for the killer diseases. And how do you get rid of some of that? One of the best ways is to do that intermittent fasting of 16 hours and skipping supper. And recent research reveals reports of establishing regular meal times with the family. And so we established those regular meals with nothing in between, either 2 or 3 meals. Nothing in between. And how do you do that 5 hours? You eat we eat at 8, and then we eat at 1, and then we eat at 6 if we eat anything at supper, but we usually eat sometimes nothing, most of the time nothing. Just drink some juice or some water, or some fruit, and some simple crackers or Zwieback. That's the very best for the evening. And if you're trying to lose weight, that is one of the most effective ways to do it. And so breakfast is the most important meal of the day, and plant-based vegetarians have plenty of breakfast choices. It should be well-planned, nutritious, simple and easy, attractive, full of variety, at regular times, and lots of color. Color spells nutrition. Yes, we need to put this bread in the oven. There it is. There goes the bread. Let's put it in. And so, put that bread in the oven. All right. So we need to jumpstart our day with a good breakfast. Now, that's my home. That's my dining room. And I make sure that my husband has lots of fruit. When I think of breakfast, I think, what fruit am I going to have? Because we are told that that we should even do less cooking and eat more fruit. And do you know that I think when I make a platter of fruit every morning for even my husband and myself. And some guests came, and I had a little bigger platter of fruit, and they said, "Oh, you went to all that trouble just for us?" And I said, "No, I do it every day for my husband." And so I like to have lots and lots of fruit, and fruit is nature's health fruit. Strawberry applesauce, delicious. Look at all the nutrients in strawberries. Good source of manganese and potassium, and just one serving, about 8 strawberries, provides more vitamin C than even an orange. Strawberries. And from Harvard Medical School, a greater intake of blueberries and strawberries was linked to preserved brain function. According to the Nurses' Health Study, berries help the brain from age-related decline, and Alzheimer's is on the rise around the world. So let's look at the health benefits of berries, because our next demonstration is going to show you how you can have a breakfast with some berries and have a one-dish meal. Preserves brain function, fights cancer, promotes heart health, delays macular eye degeneration, combats aging, improves digestion, benefits the skin, helps prevent dementia, aids in weight loss, and builds the immune system. Pretty good, I'd say, right? I'd say we need to eat some of these strawberries. Yes, they are wonderful. So let's go to another healthy breakfast demonstration. Applesauce on toast with fresh fruit. Here's the recipe, and I'm going to do that next. And let me show you how easy it is. All right. Okay, you're going to take a piece of toast, and I've toasted this whole grain bread that we just made. And now I'm going to spread some of this peanut butter, and just 1 tablespoon of good natural peanut butter, and I happen to have the all-natural, Smucker's all-natural, and you get those oils on the top. That's not added oil. That's all oil within the nut. And so I'm going to add some of this nice, does my husband like this? And this is a nice one to use when you are busy or you don't, have time to do a good breakfast. You just put some nice, and I warm the applesauce at home. And by the way, we canned 150 quarts of applesauce. So I use my own homemade whole grain, but you can get unsweetened applesauce. So I'm going to put lots of applesauce on here. And now I'd probably put 2 pieces of toast on here. But I'm going to add some of those strawberries that we just talked about. We talked about these strawberries. I'm going to put some of those on, Raluca. And I'm going to cut this banana, and I'm going to put a piece of banana on here because bananas are high in potassium, and so we need some of those good, not only vitamins, but also minerals. And I'm going to put some, so look at all the color that we have here. And now I'm going to add some of those blueberries, which are high in antioxidants. And then I'm going to add some blackberries. So I have the blackberries. And then because I want you to get some good protein, I'm going to add those walnuts that I told you about. So we're going to sprinkle that on there. And then I want you to get some extra vitamin C. So I'm going to cut this orange, and I would slice them in pieces like this and put them on the side. And then you have some wonderful one-dish meal for breakfast. Here you are. And you like that? Yes. This is a good standby. We have just a piece of toast, applesauce, and all these berries and nuts. So we're going to put that in there, and then I'm going to go back here to the screen so that we can keep on touch. So can we go back here?
This looks so good. Should I eat it?
Yeah. Can we go back to the PowerPoint here? And this is a good time while we're doing that to take any questions. You see what we're trying to do here? Yes, we're going to stand. Yes, take your question first.
Does it actually keep you full for your next meal?
This will keep you full for your next meal.
4 or 5 hours?
Yes, but what I would do with this, if I'm having this, I would make sure I got maybe some pistachios with it, maybe some almonds, or you might even have something else with it. It doesn't feel like you need to satisfy your hunger. But this, I would eat 2 of these, just like this.
Oh, okay.
I would eat 2 of those.
Yeah, because I try to eat breakfast and then between 2 and 3. And
Yeah.
so I just want to make sure it gets me there.
Well, when you eat this, you can eat 2 of those. My husband will eat 2 of those. We eat 2 of, just like I just fixed, that will be 2 of those for our breakfast. Yeah, but what I want you to do before is I want you to stand so we can get it. Let's go. I'm going to stand beside you. Let's go with our left. 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now the other one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. You did good. All right, now let's just kind of walk
Dad,
a little bit.
go turn down the AC, please. Go turn down the AC, please. AC, yes, please. I'll just start sweating in here. Tell Mr. Joe.
Let's go. One shot back. Come on, let's get some exercise going here. You young people may need to watch it while going here.
Oh, okay, thank goodness.
All right, now I want you to just slow down and walk. Walk. You always want to get a cool down. One
I heard like some.
Now what I want you to do is take your hands, put it by your side, shake it, and then I want you to breathe in, and then breathe out. Breathe in through the nose, and out through the mouth. In through the nose, and out through the mouth. And now shake your hands, just relax, relax, and sit down. Okay. And now we talk about grades. I talked about but also fruit, not only fresh, frozen, but dry fruit is wonderful, even canned fruit. And so we're going to have some apricot jam, and I will put that up. It's so simple you don't even need it, because here's what we're doing. Let me show you. You can just leave that up for a moment. Oh, but they may want to see it. Can you see me? Because I'm just going to fold it up here because it's so simple, and then we'll go on. Here's what I've done. All I have done is taken these apricots, okay? These dried apricots. And I put some 100% unsweetened pineapple juice over the apricots. That's what I've done here. And you see how they swell? And I blend it. We're not going to take the time because we've had so many questions and we've got so much to cover that you can just see. I just blend this, put it in the blender, and this is what it comes out like. And you have the apricot jam. And so there's the apricot jam. And you have a wonderful, wonderful fruit. And so we're going to go back to the screen here and go back to our books. And Mark will go over our books here. And then we're going to talk about nuts next.
What if we had a pill? And we said, look, if you come to this class, we'll give you a pill, you pay for the pill, and let's suppose we were charging $20 for the pill. And that pill would enable you to live 11 longer years. And they would be happy, healthy years. Do you think we'd have a few people in class? If science discovered a pill for you to live 11 longer years, do you think people would buy that pill?
Yes.
If they could be happier years?
Yes.
If they could be healthier years? I think they would. But here, we're talking about making breakfast a better meal. You're on page 29. And incidentally, just incidentally, page 29, class 2. But at the end of each chapter, we give you the answers for the previous chapter, for that given chapter, and we give you all the endnotes and all the studies. So we're not going to cover everything in the book or everything in each individual chapter because of time, but you can take the books home. They're designed as workbooks, and you can look at the end of the chapter. Dr. Lester Breslow was at the University of Southern California, and he was a researcher in the area of health. He practiced the health principles, and he lived to 97 years old. Now, Dr. Breslow said that there were 7 major principles that he studied with people that are living longer. And he said if you follow those 7 principles, you can at least live 11 longer years. What are the 7 principles? We find them there on page 29. 1, avoid tobacco. Tobacco is one of the largest, greatest killers in America today. You see where you are? What page you on, everybody? 29. Okay, and you've got these listed here. Limit the use of alcohol and don't drink at all. There are some amazing new studies coming out. Lancet is the British medical journal. It said that no amount of drinking is helpful. You used to hear, we'll take a glass of wine for your heart and all this kind of stuff. What we're studying, what we're finding out now in science is that just is not true. No amount of drinking is healthy at all. The newest studies that just came out this week that I was reviewing are really fascinating. If you take as much as 8 ounces of beer a day, it begins to shrink your brain. And so they've done now studies on the brain where they've taken images of the brain, and you begin 2.5%, you begin to shrink your brain. Then if you take 5 alcohols a day, five glasses of alcohol a day, you begin to shrink your brain by 10%. So it begins, and you can actually see the shrinkage in the brain as the result of alcohol. Of course, alcohol deadens the consciousness of the brain. One of the early studies on alcohol was really interesting. Dr. Melvin Knisley at the University of South Carolina developed an electron microscope where he could look at the agglutination of the blood vessels going to the brain. And you know, the red blood cells are the ones that carry the oxygen to the brain. Those are the red blood cells. So, you know, when a person dies of oxygen deprivation, it's because you don't have adequate oxygen going to the brain. And this is what happens when a person has a stroke. One of the vessels of the brain are clogged, and the person can't get adequate oxygen to the brain. So what Dr. Knisley did is this. He wanted to show his students in class, because he was teaching at the University of South Carolina, he wanted to show them how alcohol affects the agglutination of the red blood cells. And so he took 3 students, and they each one had a different hotel room. They were locked in the hotel room. Nobody knew what was going to go in and come out of that hotel room. He had another faculty member. One of these students drank 1 can of beer that night. The other drank, I think it was 3, and the other drank 5 that evening. The next day, that afternoon, they came into class. He took the students, and he had no idea how much alcohol they had drunk. He put them on a table. He looked at through the electron microscope into the eyeball, because the eyeball is it's the closest surface place where the blood vessels go to the brain. So he looked at the eyeball and he said, okay, you drank 3. Okay, you drank 1. You drank 5. And the students just sat there, you know, their mouths dropped open, because he was able to hit it on the head every time how much the students drank based on the agglutination. That's the red blood cells sticking together. And he proved without a shadow of a doubt that alcohol inhibits the red blood cell to carry oxygen to the brain. That's why, for example, you don't want to, let's suppose you had a pilot, and the pilot was walking in to the cockpit, you wouldn't want to fly with that pilot, would you? In fact, Joe back there is a pilot, and you don't have to worry, you're flying that frontier with Joe. I got another pilot back there too, great. So, do you guys have, I know, Joe, you don't drink at all alcohol, but do the airplanes have quite strict rules about pilots and drinking?
Yeah, the FAA has strict rules, and then the airlines have even stricter rules. So it's 12 hours between any kind of drink and being in the cockpit.
And why is that true? Because alcohol affects the brain, and you want your pilot to have the clearest, very clearest brain when he is making that landing, and it's a little windy and the rain's coming down, right? Sure. So here's what Breslow says. Number 1, avoid alcohol. Number 2, limit the use of alcohol. Don't drink at all. Number 3, eat in moderation. My wife mentioned 62.5% of Americans have problems with weight and obesity. Breslow says, get adequate rest, 7 or 8 hours a night. Engage in frequent exercise. Frequent exercise, what's that? Usually 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, walking, head erect, shoulders back. A minimum exercise, 5 days a week, 30 minutes a day. Okay, remain close to your ideal weight, and in other words, attempt to control that. But look at the 7th one, that's the one we're dealing with now, and that is eat a good breakfast. If you start your day off with a good breakfast, that makes all the difference in the world. Bottom of page 29, the American Academy of Family Physicians reviewed the results of a 2004 study. And most Americans say, you know what, we know it's important to eat a good breakfast, but we don't do it.
Okay, I'm going to go into, now we said we need grains in the morning, right? The whole grains. We need whole grains. We need also fruit. So I want to make sure that we get lots of fruit and lots of grains. The other thing we need are nuts. We don't need a lot of nuts, but we need nuts. So I'm going to go here with you nuts. So we're going over this first. And so nuts are an amazing food. A study during the 1990s found that actually Seventh-day Adventists, the reason they found this is because they did studies on Seventh-day Adventists in the whole country. In fact, I did one of those studies. It was very long and very detailed, and it was fabulous. And who ate a handful of nuts at least 5 times a week lived 2 to 3 years longer than those people who didn't eat any nuts. Wow, I think I ought to get some nuts for breakfast. I want those nuts. Well, a 2013 study on 135,000 women over 10 years found that those who ate the most walnuts lowered their risk of type 2 diabetes. And type 2 diabetes is on the rise. So many people are getting type 2 diabetes. So look at Memory in a Nutshell. This is actually from my book on wellness. I have a whole book on wellness and how to stay well and what are the natural remedies to stay well. That's another whole class. But nuts are certainly among the so-called superfoods, and eating walnuts actually influences memory. Even the walnut looks like a brain. Did you see that? And it's amazing. And there's a general perception that if you eat more nuts, you're going to get fat. Don't eat those nuts, somebody will say to you, because you're going to get fat. Well, our results, and this is a Harvard study, this is from Harvard University Medical School, our results show the opposite, said Dr. Ying Wu of Harvard-affiliated Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston. It's just the opposite. You're not going to get fat because do you know that nuts are a good type of fat? That's the fat we should be getting. Nuts, avocados, and all those good kinds of fats, not the fats that so many people eat with all the grease and all the, all those kind of things. So if you want to be among the positive thinking centenarians, because you know what they always have in their kitchen? Nuts. Then you need to go nuts over nuts. Yes, you need to go nuts over nuts because they are so, so good for us. So enjoy nuts. Serve them at breakfast. Every day, every single day. In fact, we have what we call a pastor's retreat center because pastors need a place to just kind of, unwind and revive. And because my husband is a pastor, he's been in ministry for 53 years, almost 55 years now. We see the intents of that. And so we have founded a pastor's retreat center, and at that retreat center, I have just one big tray of all nuts and seeds. So I have walnuts and almond nuts and pistachio nuts and just every kind of nuts. Well, all kinds of pecan nuts, all kinds of nuts, and pumpkin seeds and chia seeds and all kinds of seeds. And I put it on that tray, put it in the refrigerator, and I just take it out and I serve it in this nice big containers on that tray. But you can even add them to your salads and add them to your desserts. Just something as simple as adding nuts to your diet can reduce the risk of these killer diseases. Try them, my friends. You'll love them. You'll love them. So we're going to have this healthy food demonstration again, and I've asked for Lucas to do this one. Again, these are all in my cookbook, but this is Cashew Oat Waffles.
Did you want to show nuts? Did you want to show them this?
Oh yes. Before I do that, I'll show you what I did here. This is just a piece of whole grain, whole wheat bread, and I put some of that apricot jam on there, added for color, some fruit, and this is made out of these apricots, and then I sprinkled a few nuts on there. So just when you're eating something like this, you can add nuts to your diet. It's so easy to get in some of these nuts. And so now we're going to use some cashew oat waffles. You know what I do with these? I serve these a lot to several people who come to our retreat center, and I make them ahead of time. I have 2 waffle irons that have They're kind of like the commercial ones, and you flip it, and you can do one on the other side too, so you can do two at once. And I have two of those, and I make a lot of them, put them in the freezer, and I just pull them out and put them in either the oven, the toaster, or the microwave, and you have waffles for breakfast. And so we've had some waffles at Lucas' house since we've been here. She made this, so I've asked her to do these waffles.
All right, now, did you guys know how many waffles the Waffle House sells every minute? 145 waffles a minute. Wow. So people like waffles, and if you look at the history, they were around in the 14th century. So we are going to be making for you a plant-based alternative that is fluffy, it's tasty, and it's amazing. I just love these waffles. Actually, I have to confess, Mrs. Finney, I have a much simpler recipe, and I think I fell in love with yours this past week. I think I'm going to start making these because mine is just like 3-4 ingredients, but these are amazing. So the recipe is up there, right? It was up there. Did we have it up there at all?
Yes, I think I do originally.
Okay, maybe we can go back to it. Would that be all right if I just show you how to make them? Okay, so the first thing you do, of course, you use water. So I'm going to put the water here and dates. Yes. Okay, sure. Thank you, Josiah. You want to jot this recipe down because it's a great alternative to did you guys know what's the longest waffle that was ever made?
It's up there. So maybe we'll go over it first.
Yes, let's go over it. Okay, so we are going to have water, 2 dates, a 3/4 cup of cashews, 1 cup of soy milk, a half a teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of brown sugar, 1 tablespoon of brown sugar, 1 teaspoon of vanilla, 1 tablespoon of wheat germ, 2 tablespoons of ground flaxseed, 3 tablespoons of oil, 1½ cup of Greek oats, and 1 cup of unbleached, enriched flour.
Now let me just say something. I add the wheat germ again because it's so good for us. It's the best part of the whole wheat flour. But also flaxseed is just wonderful for us. And I don't put any oil at all on the waffle iron. And so I use it inside, but I don't have to put any on it. And I do literally, several of them, and I don't use a bit of oil on my waffle iron. I just add a little bit inside. So.
And when I did it at my house, I actually forgot to add the oil, and they turned out amazing.
Yeah, so you can do it out, but if it tends to stick at all, just add a little bit in there, and then you'll find it's really good.
So I put the water in here. This is a Vitamix, and I love Vitamixes. They're my favorite. I know there are lots of other wonderful blends out there, but I love the Vitamix and the cashews and the dates. Go ahead and blend those. And I'm using my friend Tina's. You're welcome. I'm using a blender.
Here early? How early did you need us here?
Okay, you blended it very well. And basically you just add everything else. Just put it all in there. The flaxseed and a little bit of the brown sugar, or you can substitute with the honey.
And make sure you grind your flaxseed. You want to grind the flaxseed because you don't want it
And the flour, and the wheat germ, and the maple syrup, or the brown sugar. I guess we don't have maple syrup in this one, and the milk.
To like 2 something.
Here, and the Greek oats. And you just put them all in the pot, all in the blender. Very simple, right? And we just start it again.
And you have them all ready.
Blend it again. You can just stop it. Just have to mix the oats a little bit. I guess I'm missing the little black thing that goes to the blender. Yes. So we're gonna blend it again. Make sure the flour is mixed well. And you're supposed to let it sit for about 10 minutes, but it's basically ready. And I'm just gonna bake it, and I will put it in here. Just let it bake. And I'm going to show you the final result. This is the waffle. And my friend so made these for our samples. Look how fluffy it is, right? It rose. Now, how do you eat it, right? So this is really, I'm going to show them. This is just a full little platter of fruit that you can have with your waffle. So we'll just add a little bit of almond butter or peanut butter. I don't know what you like on yours, but we're going to take some peanut butter. Then we're going to start smelling. Are you smelling the cornbread and the bread yet? Almost done. Okay, so that's the peanut butter. And then I like to, we're going to give you some toast and a little bit of peaches. We're going to make some peaches for you, but you can just add fruit. And like Mrs. Skinner said, lots of nuts. You can add some almonds.
We gotta have a few walnuts.
Some walnuts. Yes. Right. And some strawberries. You just load it up. Maybe some applesauce. I would like to try Mrs. Phyllis. Mrs. Phyllis, you usually give me one. You brought me one. You probably were traveling so much. And then I like this. Have you ever tried a pine berry before? They sell them right now in Publix. They're so sweet. Actually, is that an ripened strawberry? But they taste so sweet. And do you guys know what this is?
Oh, it's white.
It's a yellow dragon fruit. It is so good. Once you eat this, the red ones are going to be too hard because they're not as sweet. And I love those. And do you guys know what this is? Tamarind. Tamarind. Yes, it's a wonderful fruit and lots of wonderful nutrients. And then you can have some pistachio nuts. They are so good for you. And some mango. And oh, this is such a delicious, wonderful breakfast. I am so hungry. So hungry. So this one is cooking still, and we'll let it cook, and we'll go on to our next presentation. Do you have any questions?
Oh, we do that roll just.
Oh, wow.
Can you see that? Oh, wait, maybe I better come over here. Wait, this way. There it is. So that's just it. The other bread is ready to come out as well. All right.
And also, Mrs. Steele, you can drizzle a little bit of date syrup. It's just one ingredient.
We'll change it.
We're just a little bit of that. And Mrs. Steele, what about?
Actually, Pastor Mark, you're next anyway, so let's, we'll do that, we won't give her change it.
And
We'll change it and get it ready for the next time, yes.
And this is some ready whip that's made out of almond butter. You can use some of that. Here's your waffle. And do you have something else, Mrs. Steele, you want to add?
If we do that, we've got to put some
more
That's what you have.
So it's quiz time. You ready for your quiz?
Yeah.
All right. Give me 3 reasons why people don't eat a good breakfast. Fine. Okay, so somebody raise their hand and tell me. Yes, sir.
Lazy, they're in a rush, or they don't want it.
Okay, so one good reason is they're in a rush. That's actually the number one reason. People feel that they are too rushed, they can't sit down and do it. What's another reason?
Over here.
Some people can't afford it, okay? That may be true for some people. It wasn't one of the top 5 reasons, but it could be a very practical one. If you couldn't afford, if you can't afford a good breakfast, what might you do? You might want to eat a lot less potato chips and soda, and shift that into your breakfast, right? Sure. Or you might want to cut down on the meat, which is much more expensive. So there are ways that you can shift your food budget to eat more healthily. What's some other reasons why people don't even guess?
I think people are just used to eating like having like a coffee or a donut and then eat their main meal with coffee. They're just so used to it.
Yeah, people get into a habit pattern, don't they? And they eat a piece of white toast with some jam on it, or a donut and coffee, and they're off. They don't realize the importance of a good breakfast. Yes?
They can't cook.
What's that? They can't cook, sure. There's some people that they can't cook, right? So if you can't cook, what do? You come to a natural lifestyle cooking class, right? All right, so here are the reasons. You're over on page 31. These are good. Okay, what are the basic reasons? Here's what the survey found. Number 1, people are too rushed. They're rushing in the morning. What's the solution to being rushed in the morning? Setting your table at night. Yeah, set your clock earlier, that's one reason. Setting your table at night. You know, we often set our table in the evening, but we had guests once. She had set the table in the evening, it was about 10 o'clock at night, and these people hadn't gone home yet, and they said, boy, you Phillies eat really late at night, don't you? Because they said the table was set. But we set the table at night, you set your food out at night. Look at the bread. Wow, it's great, doesn't it? It smells good. Yeah, a little later we can do that.
You smell it? Oh, it looks so good. And you can tell if your bread is done, if it's perfectly brown on every side. This is a wonderful oven. You're very privileged here, those of you that are in this church, to have this oven because it cooks steaks very nicely. You can see how brown it is on the top, the sides, and the bottom. And so that's our bread.
Looks good. So some people breakfast because they feel too rushed. Other people feel too tired. They get up in the morning and kind of tired. They feel they need a coffee for a lift. We'll talk about that later. Some people aren't hungry in the morning because they ate so much food late at night. Some people feel, well, it's just not convenient. And some people say, I'm not going to eat breakfast, I want to lose weight. Actually, eating breakfast helps you to lose weight because your hunger satiation is greater, and so you don't tend to eat as much between meals. Where you tend to put on the weight is if you eat a large supper without any exercise in your bed. Some of the classic studies, we're going over to page 32, some of the classic studies that were done in the United States on breakfast were called the Iowa Breakfast Studies. These studies were done in the state of Iowa on 12 to 14-year-old boys, particularly. And what they studied was, is there any difference in boys that have a wholesome breakfast and those that don't, 12 to 14-year-olds? This is what they discovered. And you might want to write it down, the detrimental effects of skipping breakfast. First, lower attention span. So the kids, the boys that didn't eat a good breakfast, when they're sitting in the classroom, they tend to be more fidgety, they tend not to have a good attention span. Secondly, they had poor classroom attitudes. Their attitudes, they tended to be much more difficult to get along with in the classroom. The kids that ate a good breakfast, and I'll explain to you physiologically why that's true shortly. The kids that ate a good breakfast had an increased attention span, so they were able to pay attention a lot longer, namely they got better grades. They had more positive classroom attitudes. They had a better attitude in the class, both with the teacher and their friends. And they had greater learning ability. They could learn more quickly. Now, why is that true? When you wake up in the morning, your stomach begins to prepare for the breakfast. So about an hour before your traditional time for breakfast, Your stomach begins to prepare for that by secreting digestive juices that will digest the food that you're going to eat. The bodies that we have are made by a marvelous engineering creator. What machine could repair itself? But our bodies can do that. You look at the anatomy and physiology of the body. You look at the brain with more than 100 billion brain cells that sends 100,000 messages a minute all through the body. You look at the beating of the heart, the functioning of the lungs. Just the process of digestion indicates an infinite engineering intelligence. It's a marvelous creator. So when we get up in the morning, our bodies begin to digest, send this digestive juice. Now, let's suppose we eat a very breakfast of white bread, maybe a little coffee that picks us up a little bit, but 12 to 14-year-olds, let's say that kid gets up, eats very little, maybe some sugar cereal. Here's what happens. Their blood sugar levels go up, and they go up for approximately 2 hours. Then they begin to plummet. When the blood sugar level plummets, you feel more tired, you feel you can't concentrate, and it tends to go down. If you eat a good breakfast, your blood sugar level is up to about 10, but then it stabilizes and stays steady on the graph. So as the result of that, you have better concentration, you have better ability to eat, you have much, much better ability to focus on your studies. Why is it so important to eat the right kind of breakfast foods? Number 3 on page 32, you concentrate better, you have a much higher energy and strength, and also those that eat a good breakfast are able to maintain their weight a lot better. Tina, what do you have next for us coming?
Well, I anticipated that we would possibly be running out of time, and so if you get me a bowl, Rebecca, I'm going to share with you the French toast, because people like French toast, but why not have a healthy French toast? What did I do with my fork? All right, and so we're going to go into a healthy demonstration of French toast, because you see what we're doing, my friends? Just picture what we've been doing. We're giving you French toast, we're giving you waffles, we're going to give you pancakes, we're going to give you lots of different things that people eat all the time, but yet they're healthy and they're made, you see, because when you get regular pancakes or you get regular waffles or these kind of foods, basically, you know what you're getting? Milk, eggs, and sugar. That's what you're getting. And flour, of course, white flour, processed white flour, that's what you're getting. And look what you're getting in here. In these waffles, you're getting your nuts, you're getting your wheat germ, you're getting your grains, you're getting all these things. And so when I developed these recipes, because I had to, because in the days when I did this, I didn't have, cookbooks, plant-based cookbooks. They weren't out there. And I had to think, how can I make something that people eat all the time? And so that's what I did. And this French toast is, again, really delicious. Here's what we're going to put in it. And I have it ready so that we can just cook the French toast, but I'm not going to blend it, okay? Because we're due to time. But we have the cashews. Cashews are a wonderful nut also. We use the raw cashews in here. You can use the salted or the roasted, whatever, but if you want to cut down on your salt or some of the other things, you can use these, and that's what we did in the ones you're going to get. And then just water, honey, maple syrup. And by the way, your maple syrup is one of your best sweeteners. Dr. Neil Medley, who teaches health all the time, says that that's one of the best or the better of your sweeteners is maple syrup. Just 100% pure. Not the Aunt Jemima, not that, but the 100% Maine or Vermont. I grew up in Maine. They tap the trees up there. And I was giving a cooking school in Maine from where I was born, in Portland, Maine. And of course, Vermont syrup is very good too, and I've been to Vermont many times. And I was doing this, and I said, and you can put on these pancakes this wonderful Vermont syrup. And everybody said, no, man, so, I said, oh yes, I'm a Mainer, it's okay, I know. But you just have that good maple syrup, a little vanilla, a little salt, and again, you're getting some grains because you got your oats. And whether you use your cooked oats or your rolled oats, there's no difference in nutrition. They're just smaller. The rolled oats are very good. I use it for Finley favorite oatmeal, and I use the quick oats for Finley favorite oatmeal that's in my book. And all it is, that is a little water, dates, salt, and some oats. And then the whole grain bread. And some little coriander if you want it to have kind of that cinnamony kind of flavor. So I have all those ingredients, and what I do is just blend them, okay? Just blend it together. And I've already blended it because I didn't know how our time would go, and I thought, well, we won't take the time, and the blender takes a lot of noise, and so I have some already. And the other thing about this that's wonderful, I did this last night. I put this together last night, put it in the fridge, we just took it out, and you can do it ahead of time, and it's wonderful. So I'm going to pour this in here, and then I have some Silver Hills bread. Now you don't want heavy bread, but this whole grain, sprouted wheat bread is wonderful for French toast. Now I had, yes,
Silver Hills.
and I had a fork, but forks are in need here. And so I'm just going to put this, now the first time I may add just a little bit of oil. Where's my spatula there, Veronica? I have a thin spatula that I use. Here it is. I like this thin one, and I only put a little bit on at the beginning, and then I don't use any oil at all. So you're not getting a lot of oil in this, and you're not getting any in the recipe. And then put this bread in here, and just soak it with this goody stuff, and put it right on your griddle. And we're going to do a few of them. And here's another one. You see how all this soaks up? Just like, now French toast is basically just eggs and milk. And you just got all of the grains in here, and you have the nuts in here, you have the wheat germ in here, you have a lot of good things. So I'm going to do about 4 of them on here. I can actually use 6 on this griddle. This is my own griddle that I have at home. And I have this. So then you see how, and with the whole grain bread, it stays together nicely. And we'll let that cook. And then let me show you, I have a plate here. And here's the French toast. Here it is. This is what it looks like. It looks like real French toast. And you can put some fruit around there, and you can add a little syrup on it, or we use applesauce, or we put a blueberry topping. In my book, I have a blueberry topping or a peach topping. And then put your nuts on there, so you want to put those nuts. Get those nuts every time, but once you put something on it, then you can put your nuts on. And you have a wonderful, nutritious, delicious breakfast. And so we'll do that, and we'll flip them over while Mark continues with our book, and we'll tell you when we're done, and we'll show you.
Well, what about that all-American beverage that many Americans drink every morning?
Coffee.
What do you think that's called? Sure. Pick-me-up beverage that picks me up and lets me down. So the question becomes, are there harmful effects of coffee, and why should we look for more cereal beverages or coffee substitutes or herbal teas? What's the evidence? If you go over to page 36 in your class, the effect of coffee on the digestive system, there are some very specific effects of coffee that you need to be aware of. Now, what your choice is about health is your own. Nobody can choose for you what you should or should not do in your health. That's a personal choice. But at least we should be aware of the facts, and so that we can make intelligent choices, because we'd much rather make intelligent choices than blind choices, right? So the choices are ours, but yet it's important to make informed, intelligent choices. So we're looking here, some of the detrimental effects of coffee are, I put number 1A, nervousness, anxiety, and tremors. Now, have you ever noticed that when a person is trying to give up coffee, maybe you've had that experience yourself.
Just so you know what I'm doing, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm just putting my good friend Dina and her sister, my good friend Sherry, did these trays for us last night. And so I'm not going to let this go. And so I'm going to put this all together in the blender, and then sometime we'll take...
What is it? What are you
This
making?
is all the French toast. And all you do is just put it all just in the blender and blend it up, and you will have the batter like I have here. And so you just put everything in here, and now, so I'm going to put it in, and sometime we'll just give it a little blend, and we'll have some more batter. And that's what, Raluca, we can have for breakfast tomorrow. Okay, so I'm just putting all this in here, and let's see if we have a here, because the honey, a little trick for the honey, for those of you that do this and you want to do it ahead, just put a little bit of oil on the bottom and it'll just come right out. It came out good. Oh, my friend Dina, she knows how to do it. Okay, and Sherry. So that's all you do. We're going to blend that, and you're going to have the batter. And it's better if it can sit for just a little while. So we'll put it in the fridge, because then it comes out really nice and thick, so that you have a nice thick French toast.
Yeah, that looks good. We will get that blended up a little later. So what are some of the harmful effects of coffee? What are some of the reasons why you really need to reconsider when you're looking at your health? Have you ever, let's suppose you're drinking 3, 4, 5, 6 cups of coffee a day. Have you ever tried to quit drinking it? What happens when you try to quit drinking it? You get what happens? You get kind of the jitters. Anybody feel a little headachy when you try to get off coffee? It feels a little headachy. Sure. So it contributes to nervousness, anxiety. It picks you up, but then it kind of lets you down. Second, one of the things that we've noticed from a research perspective, a medical perspective, is those that drink coffee will tend to have a lot more stomach ulcers and a lot more heart disease. So there is a relationship between coronary heart disease and stomach ulcers. Another thing is this. Caffeine, of course, has addictive properties. That's why it's so hard for people to quit. Dr. Oglesby Paul of Northwestern University studied people that were drinking 3 to 5 cups of coffee a day, and he found that their bowel cancer rates were much, much, much higher. So you're looking at a variety of things. You're looking at nervousness, anxiety, you're looking at headaches, you're looking at the risk of bowel cancer rates, you're looking at the risk of heart attack rates. It was Dr. Mervyn Harding and Harold Shryock, researchers at Loma Linda University, that came up with the list on page 37. And what can coffee produce? Also, Arlene Ludington and Hans Deal, in their book Health Power, listed this. It was actually them. They said caffeine can produce, this is 37 at the top, elevated blood sugar, increased blood pressure, elevated blood fats, heightened symptoms of premenstrual syndrome, tremors, irritability, nervousness, aggregation of anxiety disorders, panic attacks, increased stomach acid secretions, that's going to lead to ulcers, urinary calcium and magnesium losses, insomnia, irregular heartbeat, increased stimulation of the central nervous system, and it overrules the need for rest. So that's one of the reasons people have a difficult time. Is this the kind of list that you would paste on your mirror and look at every day and say, I really want those things? Is that the kind of list you want to put up there? So the question you have to ask yourself is, my cup of coffee worth elevated blood sugar? Is it worth increased blood pressure? Is it worth the blood fats and predisposition to heart disease? If you're going through PMS, is it worth more heightened symptoms there? Is it worth tremors or ability and nervousness? Is my cup of coffee worth anxiety disorders, increased stomach acid, urinary calcium, insomnia, regular heartbeat? In other words, is the price that I pay for doing what I'm doing worth doing what I'm doing? And so that's why we recommend herbal teas, and we recommend cereal-based beverages, and a piece of French toast will hurt us either.
French toast, can you see it from the camera there?
Oh,
okay, well, we'll show you, I'll turn it down warm, and then we'll go to the screen here so that we can see where we are there. Pastor Finney just did that. So here we have a good breakfast. It contains lots of fruit, just some good fruit, at least a citrus fruit, which can be an orange, can be some pineapple, can be some strawberries, can be a number of things in the citrus field, grapefruits. In fact, right now, because I love the time in Florida when you can get those big bags of oranges, and we just eat grapefruits and oranges a lot. But then you have your grains, and then you have your nuts and seeds. The seeds are very important too, like chia seeds, like pumpkin seeds, like sunflower seeds, and all those seeds, which are very important. And they're all high in fiber. Fruit is nature's health food, so we want to eat more fruit. Think about your breakfast and say, what fruit am I eating? Because you know what happens, my friends? People tend to think of a meal like, what's the main thing? French toast, or waffles, or pancakes, or they'll do eggs and we'll do tofu, and or they think of a main cooked thing. But we want to eat lots of fruit because fresh fruit is so good. Look what Harvard School of Public Health says. A diet rich in vegetables and fruits can lower blood pressure. People have high blood pressure, reduce the risk of heart disease and stroke, and prevent even some types of cancer. This is very, very important to eat that fruit. Do you know, I was in getting my hair cut, and I was getting my hair fixed, and there was some people in there, and they were talking about the fact that one lady said, I don't eat any fruit at all. The other guy said, I drink at least 7 cups of coffee, 7 to 8 cups of coffee a day, and I don't eat fruit. And I said to them, don't you even eat apples? Or, no, I don't like fruit. I don't eat apples. I don't eat strawberries. I don't eat all this. Fruit is so, so important. Look at fruit is packed with healthful nutrients, vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals, antioxidants, fiber, and low in calories. Now, we had an antioxidant test, my husband and I. Actually, we had it at Florida Hospital. Which is now Advent Hospital, Advent Health. And we had an antioxidant test. And Mark was off the chart, actually. I forget the numbers, so don't repeat me on the numbers, but it was like, I don't know what it was, say 75,000, whatever. And he was off the charts. And I was off the charts even more than he was, at least 15 or so thousand, whatever it was. And I said, see, I've been eating those blackberries, because she said, are you eating berries? Are you eating blackberries or blueberries or something? Because you're off the chart here. It's amazing. And so from then on, he's eating now lots of blackberries. But anyway, we are told, in fact, this health educator in a book called Counsels on Diets and Foods in 1868 said, it would be well for us to do less cooking and eat more fruit in its natural state. Eat more fruit in its natural state. Reap nature's sweet benefits with fruit. And Harvard University Medical School findings suggested that greater consumption of whole fruits, especially berries, grapes, apples, is associated with a lower risk of type 2 diabetes. And look, this is some of our applesauce. Many of these pictures are my own pictures, and this is our applesauce that we can. We did 150 quarts this year, but we used to do 1,000 quarts when our children were growing up of applesauce every year. And it is going to help reduce the risk of some types of cancer, and it's going to help with diabetes and heart disease. Explore the aisles, the produce aisle, and choose some new fruits. I got new fruits last night at Luca's house because she went and explored the fruit aisle at some place.
It's a Korean place in Orlando.
Yeah.
So they have unusual fruits.
And so variety is the key, even just in your local grocery store.
Yes.
But always get some berries. People say it's too expensive. It's really not, because when Publix says buy one, get one free, I buy a lot of those blueberries and I put them in the freezer, and then I use it for my blueberry pancakes and my blueberry sauce and all the rest. And so, in scientific research in multiple respectable universities confirm the health benefits of following the biblical diets and eating an abundance of fruit. So let's look at some tips for eating more fruit. Include fruit on your cereal for breakfast. Look, set the table, as Mark said. If you're busy, I always have granola on hand. And I have that, if that's the last resort, with some fruit. And add it to your cereal. Include fruit for your breakfast. Make fruit smoothies. Eat fruit in your dessert or your dessert. Make fruit desserts and combine fruit and grains. I have a fruit and rice recipe in my book. Here it is, fruit and rice topped with walnuts. And so use those walnuts. So now we're going to have a healthy food demonstration of fruit toast. And I've asked for Luca to do that. She's all ready now, but here it is. If you could read the recipe.
Okay, so for the fruit toast, we are going to have a whole wheat toast, like the one we use for the French toast, and 2 cans of peaches like this, so you can get the organic ones. And you will have cornstarch. This is one of my favorite cornstarch, the Bob Mills, and water and orange juice. And so what I did here is already boiling. I put the peaches here with the orange juice, and then I mixed the cornstarch with the water. See it here? So you have this boiling. And while it's still boiling, I'm mixing it. This is an induction stove. It's not as fast as the one over there, but we had to bring it over here, so it's boiling. So then I'm going to add the cornstarch, and this is what you're going to be having a little bit of in a little bit.